I had just gotten back from vacation with a few of my friends that I've known since high school. Most of us live far away from each other, so meeting up once a year is how we stay connected. Anyway, I'd been gone for a week and was a bit exhausted and looking forward to just resting at home for the weekend before I had to go back to work. When I got inside, I didn't even bother to unpack anything. I walked over to the kitchen and got a couple snacks to substitute for my dinner, then turned off the lights and laid down on the couch. I didn't bother with the TV either. I planned on just eating and scrolling on my phone, then falling asleep. After a while, my eyes got heavy and I put my phone down on the coffee table and closed my eyes. It was late, though I don't recall ever looking at the exact time before I fell asleep. Sometime later in the night though, I woke up. It didn't seem to be for any reason, as I didn't hear anything, but my eyes shot open and my head was in alert mode. It was a strange feeling, like something had to have woken me up to make me feel like this. I sat up and rubbed my eyes, then grabbed my phone and got up to go to bed, figuring maybe my brain felt weird about me sleeping in the living room. Walking over to the stairs, I saw the back porch light was still on. This wasn't shocking, as I'd left it on while I went on vacation in hopes to mislead any possible robbers, as it would look like someone was home. As I flicked the light off though, my eyes shifted to the back door. It was unlocked. I immediately got a bad feeling in my gut, staring at the door. I thought maybe I was crazy and pulled the door, but sure enough, it opened. I quickly shut it and locked it. Had I forgotten to lock it before leaving? There was no way. I checked every door and window multiple times before leaving. I went around and turned on all the downstairs lights and looked around, trying to spot anything missing, but nothing that I could notice was gone. Really unsure about the situation I was in, I went back to the door and tested the lock. With the door locked, I was able to pull it open. I looked closer and could tell that a part of the latch was broken off. There wasn't a single part of me that wasn't terrified in that moment. I knew the chances of whoever had broken in to still be in the house were slim, but I could not sleep until I was sure. This was the exact time when I should have called the cops. I don't know if I was just too tired to think straight, or if I was just really confident that nobody was still there, but I went upstairs to check the rooms. Switching on the hallway light, all the doors were closed, just as I'd left them. My master bedroom was on the far end, with a bathroom and spare bedroom before it. I checked the bathroom first, opening the door and taking a quick look. It was empty. No signs of anything out of place. Then I walked over to the spare bedroom. I used this room mainly for storage, so there were a lot of boxes and furniture scattered around. As I walked through the room, looking behind the boxes, I suddenly heard very quiet, soft footsteps coming from the master bedroom. They went across the room into the door, then stopped. It was as if me and this intruder were just listening, waiting for someone to do something. The anticipation and anxiety made fear rush through my whole body. I could hear my heart pounding as I stood in the middle of the room, staring at the doorway leading to the hall. Then, I heard the master bedroom door creak open. Another second of silence passed, before loud footsteps sprinted down the hall and a figure ran past the doorway. I just froze. Couldn't get myself to move or anything. Just completely frozen, listening to my heart beating rapidly as the footsteps ran through the house and out the back door. Still in a state of shock, I pulled my phone out and called the police. This was one of those home-breaking cases that likely had a much more horrifying plot than just a simple robbery. Whoever it was didn't take anything. Police found no signs of someone having stayed there for long either, so they had to have broken in earlier that day. Whoever the intruder was somehow knew I was coming back that day and tried to break in discreetly so that I wouldn't notice when I got home. Then they went upstairs and hid in my bedroom all night, waiting for me to come in without expecting anything. And who knows what they planned to do if I walked through that door. I worked at a gas station for a couple years in my mid-30s. I've always had jobs that barely let me scrape by, so working at a gas station wasn't much better or worse than many of my other previous employments. If you've ever worked at or been to a gas station at night, then you know that there's always only one employee. Maybe larger gas stations have multiple, but with my experience it was always only one person. There was never anything to do, so you really only needed a single person. But it definitely made it eerie sometimes while being there alone. I'd stand and look out the window by the counter, seeing only the dim lights by the pumps with a field of darkness behind them. The location of the station I worked at was on the edge of town, a few minutes from any other buildings. We'd get a lot of traffic from truck drivers and cars that would travel between the cities, which was very common for work in the area. When this happened to me though, it was the beginning of spring and had been raining quite a lot. What's great about when it rains is that most people choose to pay with a card instead of cash, meaning far less people would actually enter the store. It was raining heavily this night, and very few cars were even coming up to fill their tanks. I guess we weren't busy in the daytime either, because all the shelves were fully stocked, leaving me with absolutely nothing to do but sit there and wait for the clock to run down. Past midnight, I was seeing maybe 1 or 2 cars pull up every hour. One man actually came in to pick up a pack of smokes, but that was it. After that, I was fighting hard to stay awake. It wasn't even that I was tired, I was just extremely bored. But then a car rolled into the station, followed by another, and then another. What are the odds, right? I started paying attention, watching through the side window. None of the people got out, they all just stayed in their cars right next to the pumps, keeping their cars running. After a few minutes, I thought I might actually have to go out there and tell them that it's dangerous to leave their cars on next to the pumps. But then a few doors opened and a few people got out. 5 people total exited the cars. They were all men and were wearing thick winter-type jackets. Leaving their cars on still, they began walking up to the door. All of the men made eye contact with me as they entered while I stood at the counter. I'm not going to try to make myself sound brave or anything, because I was shitting bricks at this point. Just the fact that they left their cars on was a clear enough sign of what was about to happen. One of the men came up to the counter, while the other 4 scattered around the store. "How's your night going, bud?" The man spoke with confidence. I looked around his shoulders, seeing the other men grabbing handfuls of product and shoving them into their backpacks. The confidence they had in what they were doing, not even yelling commands at me or holding me at gunpoint, made me absolutely terrified, probably more so than if I actually was held at gunpoint. They knew I couldn't do anything, so they didn't even bother to go through the effort of dealing with me. Everything going through my head, I never even answered the man. "We'll be gone in a couple minutes. Everything will be fine," the guy said. One of the other men came up and jumped over the counter. "Open it." I did as he said, letting him take the cash from the register. Being at night though, there was barely anything in there. The guy held up a few dollar bills, showing the man on the other side of the counter. "Where's the rest?" "We don't have any more. My boss makes sure it's mostly empty before we switch shifts." Of course, the man did not look satisfied with that answer. He stared at me for what felt like an entire minute. But then he smiled. "Have a good night, bud." He motioned to the others and they walked back to their cars and drove off. Without hesitation, I called the police. I was almost 100% sure that they were about to hit a nearby gas station in an effort to grab more cash. I alerted them of my concerns, and they sent multiple officers to that location, as well as an officer to mine. It turned out I was right. They did go to the neighboring gas station, but the officers arrived too late. The worker there had been robbed clean and had some mild injuries, but from what I heard, he was mostly okay. It's been years since this happened, and thankfully I never saw them again, though I'm unsure if they ever got caught and arrested. I feel really guilty for some reason about that other gas station worker that got hurt, mostly because I didn't get physically harmed in any way. I don't know the full story of what went down at their station, but I feel lucky that it didn't go that way for me. Maybe the worker tried to fight back, or maybe he didn't, I don't know. But sometimes, I think it's just best that you accept you're in a bad situation, and that there's nothing you can do. I'm a 22-year-old male, and this encounter happened a few months ago. I live in an apartment just outside of my college campus. It's a fairly nice, newer apartment building, but the surrounding area is pretty shady. I don't spend any time around there though. I just drive down to my campus and back. I hadn't had any bad experiences before this, so I didn't ever find myself worried about much of anything. It was a Friday, and I'd just gotten back from school. I stayed late to get some extra studying done, so it was around 7 o'clock. I pulled into the small parking lot and headed inside the building. Walking inside, I went up the stairs to my room on the 4th floor and went inside, dropping my school bag right by the shoe rack I kept next to the door. I grabbed a pre-made salad from the fridge and sat on the couch to watch something while I ate. While scrolling through YouTube on the TV, a very loud, sudden thump came from the room below. It wasn't an alarming sound necessarily, but more just surprising and out of nowhere. I listened for a moment, then continued with searching for a video to watch. A few minutes later, that same sound came from below me again. I paused the video and sat there, patiently waiting for it to happen again. I was more curious than anything. After a couple minutes, it happened again, but this time it was louder and it even caused the walls to vibrate and shake. It was more obviously someone banging something against the wall, but I didn't know what or why. I waited again, but after a bit of no further sounds, I just continued about my night. I'm not sure how much time passed, but it wasn't too long, maybe 40 or 50 minutes, when I heard a knock by the front door. I was in the kitchen, which was right next to the door, so I knew the knock didn't come from my door, but most likely my neighbor's. Listening more carefully, I could hear a man mumbling something. It sounded like he was having a whole conversation with himself, just whispering and mumbling random sentences. I won't lie, it kind of creeped me out. When the mumbling stopped, I went over to the door and looked out the peephole to see if he was gone. The dude was standing in the dark, right in front of my door. He was looking down at the knob as if contemplating whether or not to try opening it. I backed up, trying to quietly walk back to the couch to grab my phone just in case, but almost immediately, the guy banged on my door. He began mumbling again too, making me believe he was definitely on some hard drugs or something. I took my phone and held it tightly, unsure of what exactly my next move was going to be. I didn't know if he was just some harmless druggie, or if he had worse intentions, but I felt fairly safe where I was, so I held off on doing anything. After maybe 30 seconds though, the man banged on my door again, yelling something at me, though it was heavily slurred and unrecognizable. I ran to my bedroom and called the police. I didn't know what he wanted, but the fact that he wasn't leaving made me pretty scared of what he wanted. The operator said they were a few minutes out and asked if I wanted to stay on the line. I told them I was okay and hung up. Just then, the guy outside the door started banging even harder. He was definitely hitting the door with something, as it was too powerful of hits for it just to be his hands. It sounded more like he was trying to break the door down at this point. I grabbed a baseball bat from the corner of my room and prepared to hold my ground as the man continued with his efforts. This went on a while, until I saw the reflection of flashing blue lights outside the window. A minute later, an officer called out something in the stairway, making the man by the door stop. I heard them take the guy down, and I opened the front door to talk to the police. There were huge dents and cracks on the front, clearly having been smashed with some sort of hammer or even a crowbar. But what I found out next was extremely tragic and awful. The room below mine had a young lady living in it who was found unconscious